just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Welcome to the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel live show, where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about, answering your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros who might know answers to questions that I don't. Keep an eye on the chat for that. And finally, we have breakout segments where we go over funny clips, industry news, and goofy inventions. I do have a little bit of bad news. The guest that we had lined up for tonight is not going to be joining us. He had an emergency and he will not be here. We will be doing a future show with Zach, and so stay tuned for that. But we do have a guest, so hopefully you're okay with just seeing my fat face tonight. But next week we're going to be joined by Connie Schroeder from Daikin. I'm so excited because she is head of a lot of their, I don't remember her exact title, so forgive me if she sees this, but she's basically in charge or in over all of the ductless products. And I mean all of them. So, you know, when it comes to just simple one-to-ones or some of the fancy, you know, multi-zone systems and some of the different types of heads, that's what I call them, heads. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you might call them something different. But basically, you know, even the ducted mini split stuff, she's over all of that. And she's one of the ones, when I toured the factory, that she was kind of giving me some of the inside stuff, some of the things that, you know, that I wasn't even allowed to talk about yet. And so I'm so excited to have her on our show next week. Hopefully everything goes okay. I know we're coming up on Christmas, and I'm still going to be here every week, every Tuesday, including the day after Christmas. But we probably won't be doing any guests at that time because, you know, people have, you guys, I'm sure, have plans, and, you know, folks are out of town and all kinds of different things. So I'm still going to be here every week, but next week we've got Connie. We've got another guest in January where we're going to be talking to another guy from Daikin. And then, of course, we've got Zach, who was supposed to be here tonight, who was not able to be here for an emergency. So I've still got some cool stuff lined up for you guys. Real quick, I just want to say hello to those of you that have already said hello in the chat. Do me a favor in the chat, if you don't mind, and let me know how the audio sounds. I'm playing with a couple different things. I'm trying things. I'm trying to get better, and just let me know if it's coming through okay, if it's you know, if you can hear me but it's not okay, or whatever. Just let me know how that's sounding. But in the meantime, hello to Gary, hello to Arch, Ryan, Larry, Emery, and of course Ryan again. So okay, and so Emery and Ryan both say the audio is good. Ryan says, I'm getting quotes again for moving my current system to be more centrally located and deal with some duct work issues, and just getting single zone mini split to deal with room with bad airflow. I'm seeing more of that, Ryan. I'm seeing folks that, maybe they would throw money against the wall. A lot of times when folks are trying to deal with ductwork issues, we've done videos where we talked about how sometimes it's not a ductwork issue, it's a zoning issue, or sometimes, vice versa. They think it's a zoning issue, but it's an actual ductwork issue. And the reason that's a problem and so on. But, I'm seeing more folks just like what you're describing where they're basically saying, look, I'm going to, fix what I can. But when I have this one particular room, instead of continuing to dump money into it and I'm just not getting where I need to get to, they're considering other options such as mini splits. I've got a story that I want to show you guys, but it's not our typical article that I show you guys. They didn't write much of an article on this. It's a story out of Wichita, Kansas, that I wanted to show you guys, and it is a video. So let's jump over to that. And again, this is out of Wichita, Kansas. We're gonna watch this video real quick and chat about the concerns and so on. Let me know what you guys think as we go through this, and we might start and stop it a few times just to chat about what exactly they're going over here. But again, out of Wichita, Kansas, this story, the article that was never written. But the heading says, Fact Finder investigates a local HVAC company that may have scammed a couple out of nearly $30,000. So not a small amount of money. So let's watch this and go from there.
A Hutchinson couple says they can't move on with building their dream home due to a local HVAC company. The couple says they paid its owner almost $30,000 to install a new HVAC system. But this was more than a year ago. Still no HVAC system and no sight of the money. Tonight, Fact Finder investigates this couple's issue and finds they're not the only ones who have complaints about this company. It's taken time.
Well, this is my wife and I's dream house. We've been making plans and saving for this since we got together about 6-7 years ago. Well, so this will be the kitchen. We'll have cabinets surrounding the walls.
Kevin Von Traeger and his wife building their forever home in Hutchinson. They've got the frame up, windows, siding, but one thing that they paid for isn't here.
The part that we're dealing with right now that has been causing a ton of stress is the guy I hired to do the HVAC. I had paid him close to $29,000 about a year ago.
Kevin paid Matt Rollman, owner of...
So I'm going to stop it right there. First red flag. I mean, you guys, some of you have even talked about this on our show. And why would you pay him all that money up front? I mean, I don't know if these folks will ever even see this video, but if they do, my goal is not to make them feel even worse about a horrible situation, but we've talked about it before. Don't pay it all up front. Now, some heating and air companies, including mine, do ask for somewhat of an investment. They ask for a deposit, but don't pay them all of it. You don't need to, and that should be a red flag. If you've got a company that's saying they want all the money up front, if they can't produce license and insurance, or that seems to be a problem to do, if they're not willing to put certain things in writing, and if they're asking for all the money up front, I don't care if they are the cheapest price or for whatever reason you're choosing them. Maybe that, you're about to be, instead of saving $1,000 or two, whatever, you're about to choose somebody that's going to scam you. So first red flag right out the gate. The guy paid him $30,000 almost. And maybe that isn't the entire amount. Maybe he is saying that's a deposit, but I mean, come on, $30,000 before the guy's even done a lick of work. Man, that, I don't want to say he was asking to be scammed, but first red flag right out the gate. Not a good decision, obviously.
Rollman's Heating and Cooling nearly $29,000 to install an HVAC system on the property. The home is so large, 2 systems are needed. But more than a year later, still no systems.
Wanted to get the equipment bought because he said the prices were going to go up and we need to get this bought. He wanted to store it in my shop, and I was told when I paid him it would be here within 2 weeks. He had already ordered it would be here within 2 weeks, and after about a month, it never showed up. I started researching him. I started finding things I didn't like to see, and I started pressing him on it, and he told me, oh, it's all good. I didn't want to run you out of room in your shops.
Okay, I'm going to stop him again. Second red flag. We already had our first one. Here's our second red flag. He says, I looked him up and I started seeing all these things I didn't like. After you gave him 30 grand, you looked the guy up. Here, before I give somebody $30,000, regardless of the situation, I'm going to at least Google them, Again, I'm not trying to give this fella a hard time. I'm hoping that someone sees this and we can stop them. I remember just a couple weeks ago, I was helping somebody on my website, newhvacguide.com, and he had chosen a company that he was about to spend money with. And so just as we were chatting, we had talked about a number of companies, and he said, I'm going to choose this company here. I just did a quick Google search on that company, and their Google rating was 3.2, a very large company. And I don't remember off the top of my head where the guy was located, but he was in an area where he had choices. I do remember that. He wasn't in a small town where, he had less than 5 companies to choose from. He was in an area where we had talked about multiple companies, and the company he chose for one reason or another had a 3.2 rating on Google. And he said, well, 3.2, that's pretty good, right? I mean, that's more than half. If 2.5 is half of 5 and he's at 3.2, that's good. And I said, no, it's not good. Not even close. In fact, if you think about it, 2.5 is not half of 5 stars on Google simply because you can't give someone 0 stars. The lowest rating you can give someone is 1 star. Okay, so I don't know how the math works out, but I think that means half of the excuse me, half between 1 and 5 stars would be 3 stars. So that would mean that this company, assuming that they've only gotten 5-star ratings or 1-star ratings, not in between, right? Because we know there are some in-betweenies. There's people that may have given them 4 stars or 2 stars, right? But 3.2 would mean if everyone was leaving either 5 stars or 1 star, then that would mean that almost half of those people are leaving a 1-star rating. And so once I explained that to this guy and he started reading some of those reviews, ding, 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 he realized, whoa, just to save a couple $100, I'm about to maybe make a very, very, very bad decision. And so anyway, that's just the second red flag here watching this story, that he looked him up and started seeing all these bad things. And it's like, you didn't look him up before you gave him $30,000. I'm just very surprised.
So I put it in my shop, but I have it, it's all good. And I kind of left it at that.
In text messages between the two, June 17th of last year, Kevin asks when the equipment will be delivered to the home. Rollman says he's planning on dropping it off the week after. 3 months later, still nothing. 5 months later, Kevin starts asking Rollman some questions. Again the next month and the next month. Still nothing.
He would make plans with me to meet and go over everything, get started working, but he would never show. This happened numerous times. I finally started putting a lot of pressure on him. I started getting frustrated. That's when all communication shut off. He would not reply to texts. He wouldn't answer my phone calls.
Then Kevin says he saw Rollman's truck at a store in Hutch.
Confronted him there, and that was when he admitted to me that he has never bought it. He at the time told me he would buy it, but he obviously hasn't. At this point, it doesn't look like I'm probably ever going to get that money back. I know I'm not even close to the only person.
When you Google Rollman's Heating and Cooling, you find a petition on change.org titled "Correct the Wrong Matt Rollman Has Done to Our Community," signed by 102 people. On it, a few people write their own stories about them paying for services, and they say they never received them.
You have reached Rollman Heating and Cooling.
Factfinder called Rollman. He left him a voicemail. We went by the business's listed addresses and didn't find him. Kevin filed a police report with the Reno County Sheriff's Office and says he wants his money back.
Well, it's been very frustrating. I do not have that money in the budget. We're right now scrambling, trying to figure out what we can do financially to even finish this project. We're having to redo our financing completely.
Nearly $30,000 may keep this couple from finishing the dream home they thought they'd be living in by now.
I will never forget about this.
I talked with the Reno County District Attorney's Office. It says that Matt Rollman has been previously charged with felony theft for taking money for a job and not completing the work. That case for $6,000. The Reno County Sheriff's Office is now investigating. Those findings will be presented to the DA's office.
I'm actually somewhat glad to hear that this is not just a civil matter, that this is being treated, at least on another case, as a criminal case. And it should be criminal. If you take someone's money like that and then you don't deliver on what you were supposed to be delivered on, it's very frustrating when I hear, policemen say, well, that's a civil matter. It's not a civil matter. It's the guy stole this other fella's money, and it's very obvious that now again, this is all speculation, right? So I don't know these people. I'm just seeing an article. So let's just say that, everyone's innocent until they're proven guilty and all that stuff. So I'm not here to say that this guy is definitely guilty. I'm just saying that when people do what they are alleging that he did, it should be treated as a criminal matter. They should go to jail. And maybe they might weed out some of these guys that maybe they're not, maybe they can do it for cheaper, but they're also scamming people, right? And so it's very heartbreaking to even see that. I don't know if there's any more here. It looks like
It can be a frustrating part of buying tickets or booking.
Okay, yeah, so they're moving on to another story here. So anyway, what do you guys think? What a sad thing to hear that these folks had to go through that. I think that ultimately there should be some red flags there just from hearing what this guy had to say. But it also leads into, I remember talking to someone a couple weeks ago on our website, newhvacguide.com, where they said they were basically asking me about the contract and what should and should not be in the contract. I think it should be in there what's going to happen if the company does not deliver on what they are supposed to deliver on. That should be maybe in there as well. Maybe put in there what are the repercussions for one party versus another if they do void the contract. So anyway, what a crazy story. Arch says tonight at 10 p.m. at Channel 4 News, KVOA, there will be a segment of a fatal HVAC installation in Tucson, Arizona. That is very sad to hear, Arch. I will keep an eye out for that. And I have a way that, I can find articles. That's how I do find all these articles. I have a way of, regardless of where they are in the country, that I can try to find those, stories, and I'll try to keep an eye out for that. So that's very sad to hear, and thoughts and prayers for whoever that individual is and their family. Sorry to hear that. Ryan, you beat me to it, man. We're going to be talking about tonight one thing that I am not happy with. And I'm not really mad at anybody specifically or anything like that. Looks like we've had a few other folks pop in here. Hello to TJ. Hello to Bernie. Bernie B. But Yeah, Ryan pointed it out. I came across that as well, my friend. I had a meeting this past week with my local Daikin rep, and we were just chatting, and I told him about you, and I'm drawing a blank on the other fella that has asked about the enhanced fit multiple times on our show. Ultimately, I told them, I said, hey, I'm waiting on that to come out. I've got guys that join us on our live show, and they've asked questions, and the response I received was, well, it's out. It already came out. We told you about it. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Nobody told me about it. I promise you no one told me about it, because I would have done a video on it by now. So that's a whole nother topic. So I'm not mad at anybody specifically, but to see that another YouTube channel has already done a video on this particular product, which is fine. I'm not mad about that, but it's just frustrating, because here I've been waiting. I knew about this product before anyone public, before this other YouTuber, I assure you, knew about it, because they were talking about it when I toured the factory. And I will be doing a video on it. I'm still waiting on, I need to get more information on it. But shout out to HVAC Dope Show. If you guys are not following him, I don't know him. I don't know him personally. But he did a decent video on the product, and he goes over some of the benefits and also tax credit eligibility, as you point out here. And some of the other dual fuel applications that are now offered with the new fit and so on. So, I will be doing a video on that product soon. It's out, is what I'm being told now. And supposedly has been out. But I told them, I said, well, that's news to me, cause nobody has said a word to me. And so, it is what it is at this point, but I'm hoping to get more information on it and do a video for you guys very soon on that product. I just got to get more information first. So thank you for bringing that up. That's actually on my agenda to touch on tonight. Let's do a quick segment break for you guys. And I've got a pretty good question, I think, for our breakaway segment. Let me find my little thing here. This is our segment that we call My Question for You. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were pointing out that they liked doing business with a particular company because, in their words, they think they're going to be around a while. That they chose them to be their company of choice because they drive really nice vehicles, and that they, all the service vehicles are Duramax trucks and vans. And for those of you that don't know, Duramax is, if you're going to buy a truck, a Chevrolet truck or one of the other GM models, and it's a Duramax, typically means it's, going to be diesel. It's going to be more pricey. I think, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but if you were to buy just a typical truck, that's not diesel, you're going to pay, let's say 50 grand, 50, 60 grand at the most for a high end model. But then you start looking at some of these Duramax trucks, and some of the bells and whistles, and now you're looking at 80, 90 grand for some of these trucks, depending on the trim and all that, so I don't know how accurate those numbers are, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what we're talking about here. And so they were basically saying, I do business with them because they do drive very nice vehicles. Because of that, I think they're going to be around a while. And so my question to you tonight is, if a company pulls up in your driveway with a $100,000 or an $80,000 vehicle, does it make you want to do business with you? Or does it make you want to do business with them, seeing that they're driving something that's a very nice vehicle in comparison to some of the other options? Maybe they charge more, but you like that they are driving something really nice? Or does it make you feel like, now be honest in the chat, does it make you feel like you're paying too much for the service that you're about to receive? And the reason I made this our question tonight is I've heard both sides of that. I've heard some folks say, in fact, I remember years ago when I first started my business, I'd done a bunch of work for a guy. He owned multiple rental properties. I had put a system in his house, and I'd also fixed a few systems, and one in particular that he had 2 other companies work on, and they could not figure it out. They couldn't figure out what the problem was, and of course they kept trying to sell him a new system, and he's like, before I buy a new system, why don't you take a peek at it, Josh? And so I went over there, and I ultimately just sat down and read the schematics, only to find that that the system was actually wired wrong. Someone had moved a couple wires. It was an electric furnace, and it had one of those switches that you could flip it to on or to auto, and then if it was on auto, then the thermostat would control the fan. And so anyway, I figured out that that's why it was not operating correctly. And anyway, make a long story short, I bought a new truck a couple months after, being in business, and the guy stopped doing business with me. He felt like that, if I was buying new vehicles, then he should find someone else, that he must be paying too much for the work or the services that he was receiving. And so I never felt like I was charging him unfair rates. But that's sometimes perception is reality, right? If they have the perception that your prices are too high, and then you're also pulling in their driveway with a new vehicle, and to be honest with you, it wasn't even new. It was used. I bought a used truck, but it was, it was a nice truck. It was, for me at the time, with what little income I had, it was a nice truck. And so anyway, and he decided no longer to do business with us. So just curious what your thoughts are. Would you rather do business with a company that has very nice vehicles, or does that make you feel like you're paying too much at that point? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Ryan says, I can see a down payment to pay for equipment, but not everything. Yeah, I would say if he paid $29,000, that is not, I can't imagine putting 2 systems in. I know there's parts of the country that is the norm. 2 systems plus ductwork, maybe 30 grand is a deposit, but I don't know. That just seems like a lot of money to not to have at least Googled the guy, and you're going to hand him a 30 grand. Good thing he did it in a check form, so he at least has a paper trail. Arch says, too bad he waited for after the fact to do his homework. Exactly. Definitely do. Before you hand somebody a $30,000 check, by gosh, at least Google them first. Ryan says, I had a company today that wasn't licensed HVAC contractor. He had a business license and his EPA 408. He said he could buy, install, and register equipment. Do you have to be licensed to register the equipment? I don't think you have to be licensed to register it, because I've seen some websites allow the homeowner to do that. It depends on what state you're in, Ryan. Some states, what you're describing is actually okay. That there is a way to do certain work without being a licensed contractor. I can tell you in my state, I don't think that some of these, you definitely should not be installing new equipment without a heating and air license in the state of Virginia. And I would say that's probably true for most states, right? You should probably have, a contractor's license in that trade to be pulling permits and installing. And obviously, if he doesn't have a license, he's not probably pulling the permits he should either. Ryan says he seems knowledgeable and recently shared his business this year and worked at other companies for years. Should I steer clear or give him a chance? That's up to you, Ryan. Again, depending on what state you're in. But I definitely would not be pulling permits for him because he's not properly licensed. Okay. So depending on what state you're in, what he's doing may actually be okay, but I would not go pulling permits for somebody that's not properly licensed. I think the question becomes, why is he not licensed? It's not hard. If he knows what he's doing and he can go sit and take the test, in most states, that's all it requires. If you're qualified to take the test and you go and sit for it and take it, maybe he has and he couldn't pass it. And then maybe that's your red flag. I don't know. Normally I check license board before visits, but got the company mixed up with another with a similar name. It did seem like a great tech and not just a salesperson. Yeah, again, depending on what state you're in, that may be okay. But I can tell you in mine, it would not be okay. Emery says, have you ever seen installs that were not up to code? Every day. All the time. Arch says it happened this past summer and they're investigating how and why it happened. I'd be curious to hear more about that, Arch. If you find more and you want to email that to us, look up our email in the community tab and send us that info. Maybe we'll touch on this in next week's show if you get that over to us. How long do you think 410 will be readily available in the future? I think the AIM Act says that we'll still continue to have it well after the year 2030. I think it's 2036 is when it's phased down to, again, I don't have it in front of me, so guys always like to get on me when I'm not accurate with my information, but I'm wanting to say about 2036 it's supposed to be down to, what is it, like 15 or 25%, something like that. So well after the year 2030 you'll be able to get it. It's just going to probably be a little pricey, as time goes on. Ryan says, I want the Daikin Atmosphere since it's R32, but not sure any company can register it, especially if they are not licensed in my state. If you're talking about registered on the Daikin website, you should be able to do that. Again, the homeowner is able to do that. Yes, the new Daikin Fit is now on the Energy Star website. Yeah, that's the whole reason they did it. I think they went after that product because the Daikin Fit was actually created. They came out with it before that Inflation Reduction Act. So fancy new vehicles equals very high prices for customers. Very true. Very true. Are you okay with that though? Would you rather do business with someone that has that higher prices, fancy new vehicles, but you think, or does that give you the perception that they're going to be around maybe longer than, a guy that is just barely getting by, maybe. Ryan says, when I see those expensive vans and trucks with all the wraps and signage, I know I'm about to get gouged. Also, I look at pictures on their websites and Google, and if I see a bunch of guys in collared shirts with ties, know that there will be a tons of overhead and people not in the field. Those group pics. Interesting. Makes you wonder if a company has a company dinner and they take a group picture and everybody's in ties instead of their uniforms. Maybe they're not actually white collar guys, but they, but they've given that perception. Hello to Adrian. Adrian has a show for pros that I check out from time to time. So if you guys, are interested, I'll usually pop in there. In fact, he had me on a show last week, which was kind of cool. Emery says, I could care less about the vehicle. I care more about their service. Very good point. I think that's a great point, Emery. I guess they could have a really nice vehicle and not do good work and vice versa, right? They could be driving a clunker and they're just starting out, just trying to save up for that first nice van, but they do great work. That's a great point. Arch says, Ream told me to be eligible for the 10-year warranty, it had to be installed by a licensed contractor. I think that's pretty much true for most manufacturers. That's what they're going to tell you, right? You have more recourse if he is a licensed contractor and the installation wasn't satisfactory and the contractor refuses to make it right. Very true. Also true. I'll email you the link. Thank you, sir. Rather do business with a small local business with clean, older trucks. Nice. Yeah, I think that that's probably where the majority of folks would maybe lie. As Emery pointed out, they're probably going to care more about the work that they're receiving than than what they're driving. But at the same time, you know, perception is reality for a lot of folks. If they have the perception that you're going to be around a long time, maybe they're willing to pay a little more, you know, versus somebody that they're not sure about, you know. So yeah, let's jump to our next segment as you guys are still filtering in here and throwing questions out there. Our next segment is some of the funny, what we call crazy clips that I find. And so let's jump to the crazy clips. Let's see, tonight's crazy clip. Let me try to get this up here. All right, here we go. So tonight's crazy clip is a clip from a HVAC technician that I found as he was going into someone's home. It's funny, I actually had no plans on kind of talking about the companies and their setups and trucks and so on. But this is actually a video that was posted by a heating and air technician as he was going into someone's home, and he showed a clip of this. Now, I'm not going to share. Hopefully, it doesn't even pop up here. I'm not going to share who did this. You may actually think it's not okay for him to have shared this, but it's out there and I found it, and so I'm going to show it. But I just thought it was very interesting. So. He does not, if I remember correctly, he does not show anyone's face or anything like that. He's just showing his work environment that he has been invited into to help work on their air conditioning system or heating and air system. So let me know what you think of what we're about to witness here.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of garbage.
Yeah. And
I just looked up and then I see that there is water here. Yeah, you can.
Maybe he was actually there to work on the plumbing, not the HVAC. So you might be able to. You might see something graphic here in a moment. So if you have a weak stomach, you may not want to watch this next part here if you get queasy over things.
This is really embarrassing.
I'm gonna go take a look. Well, this is gonna take a long time.
I can move everything.
So, what time when you use a plunger?
Just now, like right before you knock on the door.
Oh, I see. Okay. That makes sense. That just makes sense why everything kind of overflowed.
I don't know why it just overflow all of a sudden.
I don't know.
So what's gonna happen now?
Well, I'm done here for today.
Okay.
How long should we let?
What do you guys think of that? That was crazy. Let me try to get our chat back up here. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. Yeah, what did you guys think? Adrian says, "Yeah, that's a hard no. I'll stick to commercial." Adrian's for those of you if you don't end up checking his show out, it's interesting because a lot of the folks that he and his guests they work on things that I have never even seen, which is part of the reason I like to jump in there. They work on supermarkets and industrial commercial type stuff. So he said, I'll stick to commercial. Arch says the estimates for the two companies with the newer, more expensive vehicles was almost twice as high as the smaller companies with older vehicles. Well, there you go. There you go. Ryan says this looks like some of Steve Lab videos, all that clutter. Ryan also says that's why plumbers make the big bucks. HVAC work being done at Hoarder's house. Gary says empty toilet paper rolls all over. I hope that's not the back room of a Chinese restaurant. Yeah, me too. I can tell you that for me personally, I can't say that I've ever been in a house quite that bad, but I've been in some that were close to that. And when I started my own business, I'll just be honest with you guys. I remember telling my wife, we were about to hire our first employee, and I remember telling her, I was like, look, I've worked at companies where I was treated like, a lower class citizen, and I'm not going to treat my guys like that. I'm not a doormat, and neither are they. And so there have been a few customers that were not quite that bad, but close. And we would tell them, look, you've got to clean this place up before I can work in here. It's just not even safe. There becomes a time or a line has been crossed, right? And I believe that there are times when it becomes unsafe. Not only should those people not be living in conditions like that, but I'm not going to work in conditions like that. I remember a house. Ryan says it smells like money. It smells like some things, yeah. I remember going to a house years ago where the lady, we came in the door, the living room, there was a mattress in the floor with no sheets on it. There were kids running around, not dressed. They were in their underwear or diaper. And the place had, I remember there were styrofoam plates everywhere. There were, dishes piled up in the sink. Every square inch of the counter had something stacked on it, plates and all that. And it was just, it smelled bad. And then the final straw for me was there were roaches everywhere. So I had made my way back to the furnace, and there were, roaches, everywhere. You'd look down the hallway and just scurrying up the wall were roaches everywhere. And I just told her, I was like, ma'am, I'm not the guy. I'm so sorry, but I am not the guy. And she kind of got ugly with me and started saying, what do you want me to clean? And I said something. You need to, right now at this point, you need to clean something, and you need to keep going. And she was not happy, and so on. And anyway, it's more to the story than that. Her mother called my secretary in our office and was screaming at her. And the lady my secretary told her, "You're lucky we're not calling CPS." Because those kids are living in conditions like that. You guys need to clean the place up. You need to create an environment where kids can, not be, at the very least, not have to worry about unhealthy things, right? And so, anyway, I just thought that would be a kind of a crazy clip for you guys. So it looks like we've had a few people join us here. You need to go back and watch that crazy clip. Tech Junkie says, "Are you sure you weren't at my mother-in-law's?" Tech Junkie, is your mother-in-law, does she got some roaches running around? My mother-in-law has a very nice house. I have some great in-laws, I have to say. Some folks do not like their in-laws. They have to deal with it. And I've been very blessed in that department. So they probably won't ever even see the show, but even if whether they do or don't, that still stands true. So anywho, let's jump back to our segments. And we'll put it this way. She lived with us twice. Okay. Let's jump back to our breakaway segments for tonight's goofy invention. Tonight's goofy invention coming at you is something that I don't know if it's even possible, but I don't even know that it's that crazy of an invention, but it would be nice if we could figure it out. And so tonight's goofy invention is, I basically just wrote a budget-friendly geothermal system of some type. Geothermal is it's great in theory, right? The thought process is, it's very efficient compared to other systems. And if you don't know what geothermal is, basically they bury these loops of water lines, and there's different ways of doing it. Some systems it's vertical, some systems it's horizontal, and all these different things. But essentially you're going to use the earth outside to heat or cool, basically to remove or add heat to the water lines. And so, if it's an air conditioning mode, it's going that the earth, as it goes through those loops. Let me see if I can show you guys geothermal. Show you guys kind of an image here of what we're talking about. Yeah, perfect. So, like if you look at this is a good representation, and you can just kind of see they've got these water lines that go out. They're underground. So this is kind of like a X-ray, if you will, of what they would kind of look like. And essentially, so this is a good representation right here showing, if it's in heating mode versus cooling mode, the earth, the dirt underground is a great, way to it's an interesting technology is what it is. And so what they'll do is, when these water lines come back, then they basically, instead of having an outdoor condensing unit that would be turning on and off, you would have these, let me see if this is going to come up and show what I want it to show. But instead of refrigerant lines coming in, you would have water lines coming in to the air handler or furnace. Air handler usually. So if you can kind of see there, I don't know this company, so I don't know if they're good or bad. So don't go by that. But the idea is, instead of having something that is sitting out in the super cold temperatures, trying to remove heat and put it into the home in heating mode, or vice versa in cooling mode, this is a much more efficient way of doing that. And so my goofy invention is simply coming up with a more budget-friendly way of doing that. How can we figure out how to do this more budget-friendly without having to hire a company that digs wells? And, sometimes their bill can be the majority of what this cost is going to be. So you've got a company that's installing ductwork, they're installing the heating and air equipment, and then they've got to tie on to these water loops that are brought into the house by a well company or a company that just simply does this, buries these loops. And, the idea would be, how can we make that more budget friendly? Is there a way to bury these loops without having to spend all this, is there a less labor intensive way of doing it? I know we kind of joked about it as a goofy invention several shows ago, where we talked about when they dig your footers for your house, go ahead and drop the loops in there. Is that possible? I don't know. Is there enough room or enough loops, if you will, that they could drop them down in there and then bring the water line in the house? Now, obviously, replacing that would probably not be so easily done, but maybe that's one way, just coming up with some sort of a budget-friendly way of still being able to have geothermal technology is the thought there, right? Ryan says, You could have a pond, right? Would you use geothermal? I know you can install loops underwater like a pond. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen where guys will do that, but depending on where you live, that may or may not even be possible. Do you have a pond? Do you live in an area where the pond is just as cold as, as that pond gets frozen solid certain times of the year, right? So, depending on where you are may play a role. 2030 is very long for 410 availability, especially if you're limited to present time to 410 heat pumps. Are systems with R32 more prone to leaking? I don't know the answer to that, Arch, but I will say that R32 is a component in 410A, and it's also a component in the other option that we're seeing companies offer, which is R454B. So R32 is a component that is a part of both of those types of refrigerant. Me personally, we're going to be doing more videos on this as time gets closer, but as a professional in this industry, someone that was in love with R22 in comparison to 410A, R22 was easier to work with. It was much more forgiving. And I welcomed 410A when it first came out because it weeded out a lot of guys in our industry that didn't know what they were doing. They didn't even know how to do a subcool measurement. But I now welcome a single component refrigerant back because I think that you're going to, see better. I don't want to say better performance, but it's no longer a blend. It's going to be easier to work with, and it's just going to. They say it's more efficient. It takes less of it to operate the system to perform just as well, and so on. So I'm excited for that to be an option. And the other thing I'll point out about R32 that we cannot say about R454B is it's proven. It's been used for years overseas and other countries by multiple companies, not just Daikin, by everyone. Just about by multiple heating and air manufacturers. They've been using R32. It's very, very proven. It's been used for years in those countries. So anyway, I have very few concerns in that department compared to R454B. I do think that there is a chance. Now I'm no psychic, but I do think there's a chance that there are going to be people, whether they want to admit it or not, that 10 years from now are going to say that one was better than the other. From a performance standpoint, from a standpoint of having issues and callbacks. And I think I know which one it'll be, but I just don't know, right? Ryan says maybe have a large loop system that is shared with others in an HOA. Interesting. That's an interesting concept. So that way, instead of you and your neighbors, maybe not even an HOA, but just, a couple neighbors get together, instead of having to pay to have all these loops buried that are so expensive per house, maybe save a little money because everybody chips in. That's an interesting theory. Tech Junkie says the only system prone to leaking is the poor craftsmanship ones. So any of them. That's true too. Good point, Tech Junkie. To share and spread the cost of geothermal install. Yeah, exactly. Arch says 2030 is not very long until 410 is phased out. Sorry about that typo. Yeah, it's going to be, time flies, right? Sometimes I'll hear things like, oh, this technology won't be out until this year or that year, and then it's here before you know it. It's a good point too. Arch says, when do you expect R32 systems to be readily available? I expect them to be, we already have the Atmosphera, right? So that's already available. The Daikin Atmosphera is a product that you can buy now in most states. Not all, but most. So it's out. But the question becomes, when do R32 systems become available for, say, you, right? So Arch, we all know that, those of you that join us every week, he's in Arizona where they do crazy things like putting package systems on roofs. And the question becomes, when does the R32 equivalent come out for that? And I think the answer is obviously before next January, so in the next 12 months. But I do think that as we get closer to springtime, I don't have an inside track on that. Maybe Connie can share that with us next week. But I would say that you're going to start seeing more equipment come springtime. You're going to start seeing more options available. And then obviously by fall for sure, you would definitely hope to see most 80% of products out there that are going to be offered come January. You would hope they would start to be offered in the fall, because they're not going to wait until the last minute to flip the switch, right? They're right now they're waiting for all the states to approve them. And then once that happens, I would say that any day after that, you're going to start seeing things be offered and rolled out. I would not be surprised if we start seeing, say, come February or even March, companies start, you start seeing the big manufacturers start to, advertise, oh, this is coming out and it's got the new refrigerants. But a lot's got to happen over the next 12 months. You've got heating and air technicians that need to learn how to work with A2L refrigerants and get certified and all that good stuff. So I don't have an inside track on that, unfortunately, Arch. Ryan says, you have a pond, right? Would you do geothermal? What is your thoughts? I do have a pond. Funny you know that. So my pond, at least the one on my land, is not that big. We're talking, I would say it's probably 15 feet long, maybe 20 at the most, would be pushing it. And then probably only about 12 feet wide. It's not a very big pond. It's certainly not very deep. But I don't think that it's big enough for me to try to do something like that. Definitely not as my primary source. But I have a friend of mine who built a pond on their land, and they were just creating like a little fishing pond. But I remember him joking about it when I was young. I was probably, barely an adult when they built that pond, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I remember them building that and him joking about throwing loops of copper in there. That's been, we're coming up on what? That was 20 years ago now. But yeah, so as one of you already pointed out, it's not a new technology. Geothermal has been done in ponds before, but I think depending on what part of the country you're in, would it make sense? And my pond's just simply not big enough. It's so small that even here in Virginia, you start getting closer to January, and there are times when it'll freeze. I could almost walk on it. I'm not brave enough because I'm chubby, but it's that small. So anyway, as we wrap up the show, guys, feel free to drop any companies that that are good. I'll even add to that this week, and feel free to drop any products that you like. If you've got a product or a company that you like that does good work, drop their name and where they're at in the country, or again, a product that you like for one reason or another. Drop that in the comment section here. I will, just a reminder, next week we're going to have a guest on our show, and she is head of all of the ductless products at Daikin, and so I'm really excited to have her on. And you guys are going to be allowed to ask some questions as long as you mind your P's and Q's. If anybody gets crazy, then we might have to mute them. But other than that, I'm excited to have her on. We've always talked about doing that on our show, is having some pretty cool guests that no one else has. And I know Connie's been on podcasts and shows before, but I don't know that she's been on anybody's, like what we do here, where we get to talk directly to you guys and share cool things with you directly. I don't know that she's done any of that. and maybe she has, and I'm just not aware of it, but we've always talked about being able to do that. And so I'm excited for that. Do me a favor and share our show. Let's get the numbers up a little bit. Let's get it up, instead of 10 of us every week, 10 to 20 of us. Maybe we can get up to, say, 100 to 150 of us. And, and that way, we might be able to have some other guests on, right? I mean, who knows? So anyway, Gary says, have a great week. You too, pal. Arch says, there are R32 mini split systems being sold on Facebook's and Craigslist around here. They're made in PRC and imported from Mexico. Interesting. I'm not surprised, but that is interesting. So we will wrap up with this. Emery says, what's the worst install you have seen? That's a really good question, because I've seen some bad ones. We just went to one a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to mention the company's name, but there's a company that likes to sell products online for DIY, and the homeowner had bought a house, and they had a it was 3 indoor units, but it was 2 outdoor units. So one of them was a 1-to-1, and then the other one was a 2-zone mini split. So they had 2 heads on 1 outdoor unit. But anyway, it was just very sloppy. It was, the line sets were just kind of running down the wall. They were strapped with this, cheap strapping that, once the sun hits it after a long summer, it was probably going to fall apart anyway. But he called us because the system was brand new and was having all these issues. And I had to tell him, I was like, look, you can certainly call somebody else. And maybe you should, if that means I'll lose your business, I get it. But I'm not going to touch this. I'm not even going to try to, because for me to touch it and be able to sleep at night, it all needs to be jerked out and redone correctly. And then not to mention, he had been calling, it's not HVAC Direct, Arch. Ryan probably knows who I'm talking about, so he can put it in the chat if he wants. But it's a company that sells DIY mini splits. But anyway, make a long story short, the guy told me, he's like, look, I don't want any more issues. I'm willing to spend the money to have it done right, to have it done for it to look nice, but ultimately for it to operate correctly for years to come. And so so that's what we did. And he had been calling, Ryan just put it in the chat, so I'm not going to say their name, but he had been calling them for months. And the first time he called them, they sent him some part, and he got that and whatever. But then he had called him a couple more times, and he couldn't get, I guess the way their customer service was set up, he was leaving messages and was never receiving callbacks. And that had gone on for a while, long enough for him to have gotten fed up enough. The last thing I'll say is, because the equipment was basically new, he did say that his son wanted to see if he could continue to call them and get something out of them. And basically wanted to save the equipment. So when we removed it, we were mindful of that and, make sure we capped the line sets and just made it to where they could reuse everything as long as it's then installed properly. But, so anyway, I don't know if that's the worst one I've ever seen, Emery. But that was probably the worst one I've seen recently as far as the installation was pretty sloppy and pretty horrible. We see things all the time. In fact, I have a whole series of videos coming up where we're going to be talking about some of the things that homeowners can look out for when you don't necessarily know what you're looking at. And what I mean by that is, right, so homeowners, sometimes you may not even know if they did a good job, because you don't really know what you're looking at sometimes. And so we're going to do a whole series of videos of some of the common things that we see that you can look out for and kind of show you that that's an issue. So anyway, As always, thank you guys for your support. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so. I appreciate all of you that, especially you guys that join us every week. I don't take it for granted. It's been a lot of fun so far. And next week is going to be the most fun show we've ever had, because we're going to have Connie on with us. Connie Schroeder from Daikin, who, if there's anybody that has an inside track to what's to come, it's her. And so we're excited about that. And we're also going to be moving into next year, 2024. We're going to be doing more shows with more guests. And how cool is that? I mean, that's what I've always wanted, is being able to give, homeowners and you guys that don't normally get to hear directly from some of these people, give them an opportunity to talk to you directly, and for you guys to be able to ask questions directly. I don't know of anywhere else you can do that. I mean, I genuinely don't. Connie's done other shows for heating and air guys or heating and air companies, but their audience is guys like me. It's not folks like y'all. So share it. Let your family know. Let your friends know that we're going to be doing more shows like that. And let's get the numbers up here, to where you guys, we can do more of that, right? So anyway, next week, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Find out what that time is in your area if you're not in our time zone on the East Coast. And we will be here live with Connie Schroeder next Tuesday. Make it a great week, and we will see you.